Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Immigration ABCs podcast. I'm Dustin Saldarriaga, an immigration lawyer with Scott Legal PC in New York City. And today we're going to be hearing about one man's journey as he created a thriving law firm on an E2 treaty investor visa. It just so happens that I'm talking about Ian Scott, who is the founder of our law firm, Scott Legal PC. Ian will share with us his inspiring journey, how he started a successful law firm in the US as a foreign national, and what makes Scott Legal and its clients unique. So Ian, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Dustin. It's great to be here.
So Ian, why don't we start? I want to talk about the firm, but before we do that, let's take a big step back. I'm curious, tell us a little bit about where you grew up. Tell us about your family and your upbringing.
Absolutely. So I think that whenever I get the question of where are you from, it's always a difficult one for me because it's really complicated. Because I was born in the UK, so my parents are from Trinidad. They moved from Trinidad to the UK. I was born there, lived there the first 5 years of my life. And then we moved to Canada, where I grew up. So I grew up just outside of Toronto, and went to school in Toronto. I did an undergraduate degree and then an MBA in Toronto, and then became an accountant first. But so it's where you're from. Parents from Trinidad, born in the UK, spent most of my time and growing up in Canada in Toronto, and then ultimately moved to the United States. So.
And do you remember, it sounds like growing up with parents who were willing and able to change countries where they lived. Immigration, was it a topic of conversation at home, or do you remember kind of an early formative experience when you realized what immigration is?
Yeah, I mean, I did, we left the UK when I was 5, but I do remember my father taking 2 trips. He went to the United States and he went to Canada, and the idea was to see which place is it that we wanted to move to. So I do have some not vivid recollection, but I do remember those conversations and those discussions, and certainly remember moving from the UK to Canada and arriving in Canada and some of the differences that I encountered. Because for example, when I arrived in Canada, I still had a British accent. So the kids used to make fun of me at
Mm.
school, I do have some recollection of the discussion with respect to moving to another country, and certainly remember bits and pieces about the move itself. So.
And you mentioned you got an MBA, you were an accountant. So clearly your career hasn't always been focused on immigration or even law. When you were a child, what did you think you would be doing when you grew up?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that I what I thought I would do when I was a child is exactly what I'm doing now. In the sense of when I was younger, people would ask me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I usually would say a judge, because I like those television programs where they, Judge Judy, that type of thing. It was Judge Judy wasn't around at that time, but that type of program, and I liked analyzing the law, etc. And then people would always say, "Oh, well, you have to be a lawyer first," and I'd say, "Yes, I know that." So I think that law was always something that I was interested in. But as I went through school and I started to have more of a accounting and finance focus, and then I applied to this MBA program and was accepted right away, I ended up doing that. It wasn't till a bit later in life where I realized, or what is it I really want to do with my life, and that was to become a lawyer. So then decided to go back to law school, or go to law school, and pursue a law degree. So.
Perfect. And along the way, of course, you had to navigate several visas. Take me back to kind of the first memory you have of applying for a visa and what was going through your mind in that process if you remember.
Yeah, so the first visa that I obtained, well, because Canadians are what's called visa exempt, so we're allowed to enter the United States, without a visa. So I entered the United States as a tourist on several occasions, and never really thought about it. I just thought of it really as an extension of Canada. You'd show your Canadian passport, and typically at that time they would actually just wave you through. You wouldn't even have to swipe your passport or do anything like it is now. So then I was living in Canada and working at a bank. And then we decided that we wanted to live and work in another country, and then decided to go to the United States. And I obtained a job very quickly at a large investment bank, and I was eligible for a TN visa. The TN visa has a category for accountants, and I was an accountant. I had a chartered accountant designation, a CPA designation, and the relevant degree. So what I remember about that is that at that time I wasn't an immigration lawyer, and what I did was I obtained a draft letter from a friend who had was able to get the TN previously, and so I did the letter myself. And what was interesting is the company did say, "Well, do you want our lawyers to work on the letter?" And I said, "Oh no, it's quite straightforward. I can just do the letter and cross the border." So I did I compiled the letter. Went to the border, and it was a horrible experience. I had a border officer that screamed at me in front of everyone. It was, it wasn't kind of a private discussion, and he complained about the letter and said that the letter was incorrect because it said a permanent role and the TN job has to be temporary. Now, as an immigration lawyer, I do understand some of the issues that he had with the letter, but then as luck had it, the he admitted me, so that was that was fine. And at that time, the TN visa was only you could only get the TN visa for 1 year at a time, so you had to kind of renew it every year. And then, of course, once I obtained the TN visa and got to the United States, I said to the company, "Yes, please take over, have your lawyers take over the preparation of my TN visa because I've had enough. I don't want to be screamed at." And the officer did, at the end, he was very nice. He explained some of the issues with the letter. He actually crossed out some things and changed some things in the letter. And as I said, he did actually admit me. So that was it ultimately worked out well. But that was my kind of first immigration experience in the U.S.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure that stays with you, right? And fortunately, you had a good officer who was willing and able to give you some constructive feedback there.
Exactly.
That's good. Ultimately successful in that endeavor. Now, besides the T, and you've also had several other visas. We'll talk about the E2 in a little bit, but what other visas have you navigated in
Sure,
addition to
absolutely.
the
So
T?
then, as when I was in the United States and I was on the TN visa for approximately 10 years, and then I decided to go to law school. So that required an F1. And again, it's much easier for Canadians because the F1 visa normally requires an individual to go to a consulate and have an interview and get the visa in their passport, etc. But Canadians are visa exempt for all visas except for E2. So I was able to get accepted at Harvard Law School, and they issue what's called an I-20, and then I was able to take that I-20 and go to the border and cross the border, and then so now after that I was in the United States on F1 status, which is the equivalent of a student visa. Now, I jumped to F1, but right before that, right before I left the investment bank, they did change my status from a TN. Now, what the reason they did that is because the company was going to sponsor me for a green card, and the TN, because the TN was only issued for 1 year at a time, it wasn't really enough time. That's changed now because it's issued for 3 years at a time, but it wasn't really enough time for them to process the green card. So in order to start that green card process, the company actually switched me over to an H-1B visa. So before the E2, there was the B1, B2 that I'd entered just as a tourist. There was the TN visa, there was the F1 visa, and then there was the H-1B visa. All of which I had for a period of time. So.
And you raise actually what's one of the very common questions that we get at our firm about what the TN visa can lead to. And uh, part of the response to that question has changed over time. I think in the past, when the TN visa was issued for only a year, the question of does it lead to a green card? Can it lead to a green card? It was really it's practically very difficult for a TN visa to lead to a green card. Whereas now that it can be issued for 3 years, you do see more people who find the opportunity to apply for a green card while they're on a TN and actually pursue that path.
Exactly.
Um, so tell me, when you're in the US in TN status and F1 status, take me to is how do you think about maintaining that status? Is that something that it's only when the company, when you were at the accounting firm, it's only when the company would contact you and have you, renew your TN that you'd think about it, or is it something that's on your mind as you, more on a regular basis? Kind of take us into the
Yeah.
mindset of someone who is in one status and then another, which have different requirements to maintain that status.
Exactly, and I think that at that time I wasn't an immigration attorney, so I wasn't really thinking about the status and the maintenance of status, and kind of really just thought of the process as a simple one, and one that was, I couldn't really run into any problems. That was kind of, I was a bit naive, but now as an immigration attorney, I understand there are plenty of rules and regulations that often people overlook, and those lead to problems. But I think that I was working for a large company, so the TN in particular, they were always kind of advising me that, okay, your TN's coming up for renewal, and we have to prepare a letter. And I had all of the information because I was working for that large company, because they had a large law firm that processed all of their immigration petitions for them. I think that it was similar when I had the F. Now, the only thing that I think that, an interesting part of your question that happened with the F is that, I was on the F visa, or an F status, and I was going to law school, and then I was in my third year of law school, and you go through a process where you apply to large law firms, and I really didn't want to work at a large law firm. But I think that what happened while I was there in my second and third year of law school, I quickly realized that, oh wow, in order to stay in the United States, I need a visa. That it's not, I actually have to. So I actually made a choice based on having a visa. I went to a large law firm when really it really wasn't something that I wanted to do, and went to a large law firm because in order to stay in the United States, I needed work authorization or some basis or some status that enabled me to stay in the United States. And then when I got to the large law firm, I started to think about, wow, like, I already know that this isn't what I want to do, but how is it that I'm going to be able to stay in the United States, and started looking for options.
Perfect. And we will talk more about that
Yes.
option in a few minutes,
Hmm.
which ultimately led to the creation of our firm. Before we do, being a CPA is unusual. Most immigration lawyers are not also CPA, certified public accountants. How does being a CPA shape both how you run Scott Legal as well as how you work with your clients now, many of whom are business owners
Hmm.
or at least are working for companies?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that one of the significant benefits of having the CPA background and also the MBA is that a law firm is like any other company in that it is running a business. And I think that when I started the law firm, it was just myself, and I had lots and lots of colleagues that were solo practitioners and starting law firms. And what I did see is that they were focusing, on just the legal work, and didn't really fully understand a lot of the other business aspects that were and are very important in terms of running a business. Things related to marketing, things related to billing, things related to client service, and a whole list of things that are all very, very important in terms of running a business successfully. So I think the CPA, in terms of running the law firm, has really shaped my ability to both do, because I love the legal work, but also recognize that it is necessary to run the law firm and have all of the finance and other policies in place to be able to effectively run the law firm. I think that the CPAs also assisted the firm, because a lot of our clients, we do focus on investor visas and also employment-based visas. So I can speak the language of the people who are our clients. So sometimes, for example, I see clients that are applying for an E2 visa, for example, and they may have an immigration lawyer that doesn't understand a business plan at all, right? They don't understand financial data, they don't understand a business plan at all. And similarly, there are a lot of visas like a EB5 or E2 and even L1 that do kind of rely on some understanding of business concepts, because they do require sometimes tax returns or an analysis of those tax returns, an analysis of financial statements, a detailed analysis of where money came from and understanding that. And then often with these visas, there are agreements that people have, business agreements, contractual business agreements that my CPA gives me insight into. And then the final thing is that there's always quite an intersection with respect to immigration and tax, right? So people who are coming to the United States become ultimately residents for tax purposes, and sometimes do have tax questions. So we don't focus on tax, but I think that often the CPA background gives me an ability to understand what their questions are, or to raise the issue to them, that here is a potential tax issue and you may want to seek tax counsel because this is something that could come back to haunt you if you don't. So I think all of those, the CPAs really help to shape all of those things.
Absolutely. And when dealing and working with clients who are applying from kind of an employment based or a treaty investor visa standpoint, the numbers are really critical. And so,
Exactly.
what I've found is that oftentimes adjudicators, numbers are nice because they're concrete, right? They're very objective. And so if the lawyer is able to explain numbers and support them, they can make a huge difference in an application. It's not a soft factor, right? Where
Yep.
it's subjective. How do I feel about it? Numbers, you don't really argue with. Here's the revenue. Here's how we get to the revenue. Here's how we get to the profits, and here's how that leads to the employment of people. So, um, what I've seen in working at this firm with those clients and with you, who focuses and has this mindset of accounting and business, is that it allows you to root applications in kind of objective numbers that can be very persuasive if they're presented the right way.
Absolutely.
Um, Take me back. When was it? Slightly shifting gears here. When was it that you realized you wanted to practice specifically immigration law?
Yeah, so when I was in, after law school, when I accepted the job at the large law firm, and I started, and I was kind of thinking, well, how can I want to stay in the United States, or what are some options, and then started looking at different immigration options, and I think that was the first indication that I had that it would be interesting to practice immigration law, because my personal experience, I've been on a number of different visas. The other visas that I was on, I didn't, other than the first almost botched attempt at the TN, I didn't really approach those visas as an immigration lawyer, or other than to kind of, the law firm saying to me, what data do you need, and me providing it. But for the E2, I did have to do, or the E2 and the assessment of what other visas were available to me, so such that I wouldn't have to necessarily work at the large law firm. That was something that I had to conduct research on. I had to, whether it was consultations with other lawyers, looking into the immigration law statutes to see what what was available. So I think that was the first inclination that immigration law might be an area that I'd be interested in practicing. And when I started the firm, I did kind of it's almost, I'd say, made the mistake of kind of adding on a couple of other areas, right? Saying, okay, well, we do this and this and this, but then it quickly became evident to me that it's probably a good idea to specialize in something, right? To kind of focus on an area, and so then really what the firm started to do is focus on more investor visas, right? So then we could marry the immigration piece with also the business piece, because the investor visas focus on people normally who are coming to the United States to start businesses in the United States.
Perfect. And I know that I know because of our experiences that we've shared. Ian and I actually went to law school together at Harvard Law School, and were involved in a few of the same programs that focused on immigration. So we did the Immigration and Refugee
Yeah.
Clinic at Harvard Law School, and we were very fortunate to be selected to be part of an inaugural student program where we were able to go to Tel Aviv University and practice asylum and refugee law there, which it was wonderful being with Ian in Israel, and quite an amazing experience. So Ian, I'm curious, as you were a law student, uh, you know, having the opportunity to engage in those experiences, how did those experiences influence your ultimate decision to practice immigration law?
Yeah, I mean, I think they assisted because I enjoyed all of those courses. I enjoyed the immigration law course that I had at Harvard. I enjoyed the refugee clinic that we did, and then also the I think it was a month or 5 weeks that we because there was a kind of a whole semester course, but and then there was a 5 weeks of kind of practicing refugee law in Israel. So I think that it reaffirmed that it's an area that I had an interest in. So I think it certainly helped, because I think that sometimes what can happen is you can have idealistic view, or a very positive view of a particular area, but then once you actually do it, you may be, your opinion might change, right? But in this case, I did find that immigration law very, very interesting. I think that the immigration law course that I took at Harvard was not very technical. It didn't kind of focus on visas very much. It kind of was a little bit more conceptual, but very interesting in terms of kind of exploring a lot of a lot of ideas, and very, 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 very interesting. So I think it reaffirmed that it's an area that area of the law that I had a lot of interest in.
Perfect. And so, Scott Legal, let's talk about our firm. What year was Scott Legal founded?
In 2012, so we started in
2012.
2012. Yeah,
Coming up on
yeah.
12 years old this year.
Yes, yes.
Excellent. And take me back to actually starting the firm. So how did you land on an E2 visa for that, and what were those early months? And part of the reason I want to get into kind of your mindset there is that so many of our clients at Scott Legal are in the very early stages of starting their business.
Yeah.
And personally, I think it's one of the things that I love most about the work that I do is that I become involved at such an early stage of someone kind of building their dream. They have sometimes not even a business plan. It's just an idea that they care about doing a certain type of work. They think it will be successful. They hope it will be successful. But I'm one of the first people they're talking about as they're embarking on what must be an exciting but also a frightening journey, right? They're putting a
Hmm.
lot on the line here. So take us to those early months when you were leaving the big firm, starting your own firm, while applying for the visa, preparing for it. What was your mindset like? And
Absolutely,
yeah,
yeah.
take us there.
Absolutely. So when I started to do the research, when I started working at the large law firm, and I started to do the research with respect to what other possible options were available to me, the E2 was an option where, it's one of these things where you research it and you say, well, that sounds just too good to be true. That's that's exactly what I was looking for, and usually life doesn't work out that way, unfortunately, because I in addition to really liking immigration law or law generally, I also thought that being an entrepreneur is something that I was set out to do. Like I thought that was a path that I really wanted to follow, and this looked perfect. It was a visa that was based on your nationality, and then investing money in a business, and growing that business, and ultimately hiring U.S. workers. And I thought this sounds perfect. So did a lot of research and really thought as well. Do I want to hire someone to do my petition, or do I want to do it myself? And because I was a lawyer, I thought, let me try this myself and kind of understand. And I thought it would help me as well if the law firm decided to practice in that area as well. So put together the application, and went to the consulate, and luckily it was approved. And the other kind of thing that was happening at that time was because the premise for the business was kind of twofold. One is that in my last year of law school, I wrote a book, which was on kind of law school and law school success. And the book it's quite, it was picked up by a major publisher, Simon and Schuster publisher, and it was published. And the kind of the business premise was both like the book and this and an immigration slash, and there were a couple of other things I think that we practice areas that we added, immigration and some other practice areas of running this firm. So yeah, and then it was a difficult decision because the way that the immigration system works is, at the time when I was at the large law firm, I was on a visa called an H-1B visa, and they changed the rules since then to give what's called a grace period, but at that time there was no grace period. So because if I leave a job, I want to give notice. I don't want to just pick up and take off. I had to give my notice, so I had to give before my visa was approved, right? Because if I went to the Canada, applied for the visa, and it was approved, I wasn't able to return to the United States and continue working on H-1B in status, because that would have been the safest route, right? If I don't get the visa, I still have my job, I still have ability to stay in the United States. But I wasn't comfortable with just leaving a job without giving any notice. So I gave my notice, and then the day of my last day, like it was a Friday, I took a flight because there was no grace period, right? So I took a flight from United States to Canada, and then my interview was the next week. So there was a lot riding on it. My ability to stay in the United States was riding on it. I had no job because I quit it, and if I didn't get the visa, but I had a great examiner, and everything looked good, and they approved it right away, and I was able to return to the United States um, quite quickly, and because at that time interviews were only taking 2 or 3 weeks, and then was able to start the business
Perfect. And this was at the U.S. consulate in Toronto
in
that
Toronto. Exactly, yes.
Yeah, you point to, both the pros and the cons of the E2. I think when we talk with clients, if someone has treaty country nationality, which I think is a list of over 80 countries at the moment,
Hmm.
it's one of the first options we would consider.
Yep.
If someone is a national of a treaty country and they want to start a business in the U.S., there are few better options in most cases, obviously depending on the circumstances. But you also point to some of the difficulties. You do have to put a lot on the line. One of the other challenges that clients have to navigate is actually investing in a business that might not have a visa approved
Hmm.
ultimately. And
Yep.
and I'm curious how you thought about that, putting your personal savings on the line to start this business where in the end that officer in Toronto might decide you don't get a visa. How did you think about that, and plan for that?
Yeah, I did. I was comfortable kind of spending money even though I wasn't sure about the visa. And I tried to bolster the case and make it as make it give the case as high chance of success as possible. So, for example, I leased office space and signed an irrevocable lease for a year, and it was, I think, $1,700 a month, and it was, closed door office, but I really didn't need it at all. It was just me, and I didn't have any staff. I didn't even have any clients. And so I didn't really need the office at all, but I was kind of willing to kind of incur that 20 plus K expense because I think it was very helpful to the application. When I applied for the E2, the consulate that I applied at, the U.S. consulate in Toronto, was very comfortable with lower investment amounts for businesses that were more service oriented, or they were comfortable with if there are other factors. They liked my background. They liked the fact that I had a CPA, that I had an MBA and things like that, and they believed that I would be able to grow the business and create U.S. jobs. But it is something that you have to be comfortable with. We have this discussion all the time with service-oriented businesses in particular who don't really want to spend much money because they're right, it's really not required, but unfortunately the consulate won't approve your application unless you spend the money. And then the other kind of thing, at the time I wasn't thinking this, but now as an immigration lawyer I know it, is that the approval rate for E2 visas is very high. So our approval rate is probably like 98, 99%, and past results don't predict future outcome, but even the government posted approval rates are over 80%. And so that includes high risk consulates. It includes people who don't know what they're doing, both lawyers and applicants, people applying on their own and things like that. So even that is over 80%. So it is a visa that they are trying to approve as long as there's a basis for approving. And in our experience, often when someone is denied, if they use a good immigration lawyer or immigration lawyer that's familiar with E2 visas, and then even if they're denied, then often when you reapply, you can have a successful application. Again, all that depends on the case and the factors and the consulate and things like that. But the E2 visas do have a very high success rate.
Perfect. And you mentioned that you invested, I think you said $20,000. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. And that also is a topic that we discuss with clients quite regularly, which is how much do I need to invest? 20,000. I think if a client came to us with that amount, it would certainly be at the lower end. But what
Yes.
your experience is proof of, and what we really work with clients to do, is to create an application that is strong in the whole.
Yeah.
That it is not just about $20,000. It is that with that $20,000, it is operational. It is already employing one person. It already has executed
Hmm.
contracts or letters of interest with prospective clients. So I think that also is a source of inspiration,
Yeah.
that you were able to navigate that without putting an enormous amount of money on the line. And it's just another example of why the E2 visa really is amazing. With $20,000 or not much more than that, and a robust plan, you can get a visa to start a business in the U.S. and start employing people, which is amazing.
Absolutely.
Um, so looking at where Scott Legal PC is now, what would you say it is that sets the firm apart, given that there really are many, many immigration firms, immigration lawyers out there? What is it that sets Scott Legal apart?
Yeah, I think two things I think that immediately come to mind. I think one is the expertise. So I think we have very specific expertise in many areas. Like, so, for example, E2 visas. We've processed hundreds of E2 visas, and are often asked. Like, so, for example, I've been asked to sit on E2 panels, numerous E2 panels, including E2 panels that are training other immigration lawyers. So I've sat on the E2 panel at the American Immigration Lawyers Association annual conference, where thousands of immigration lawyers go to learn about different topics. And I think at least 3 or 4 years I sat on a panel, and but then also sat on a number of different panels. I'm going to be sitting on a panel in Vietnam on E2 visas at the end of February. I'll at the February 8th, I'll be doing another training session, which is a remote learning session for immigration lawyers. So I think the expertise, I think, is second to none, and then that expertise translates into significant approvals. So again, our approval rate's probably 98, 99% on petitions, and again, past results don't predict future outcome, but it is a very high approval rate. And I would say that a lot of the cases that we do, in particular E2 cases, are what I would consider high risk cases with lower investment amounts, or cases that others might have might have a little bit of difficulty to get approved. I'd say the other difference between Scott Legal and other firms is our focus on customer service. So we take that to the nth degree, and we really do, like, we're shocked sometimes when clients come to us. A lot of clients that change from one lawyer to come to us, or are dealing with other lawyers. And the things that happen with those lawyers, like even simple things like communicating, responding to emails, sometimes during consults and clients ask, like, I've been trying to reach my immigration lawyer for a few months and I can't reach him or her, and that's just something that doesn't happen here. We have kind of policies and procedures in place that are aimed to assist clients. So whether they're communication, so if someone's approved for an E2, we have kind of a very specific communication after, congratulations, but also some of the things that they have to be aware of to make sure that they're continuing to maintain their status. We had a situation just recently where we processed an EB5 petition, and the applicant had recently had conversations with other immigration lawyers telling them, you have to leave the country now, you have to leave the country now. And then they came to us, and I did the consult, and the person explained the situation, and there was a regulation, it's 245K, a regulation that enabled this person to file an adjustment of status application 6 months after they were out of status. But a lot of other immigration lawyers were not aware of that. So we are customer service focused, but in a way that is focused on advocacy, right? So we're not an immigration law firm that just spouts out rules and tells you what you can't do. We are looking for ways that we can assist you, and laying out all of the options, and also providing a recommendation to you with respect to what it is we think based on our experience. So I think those are the things that really set us apart from other immigration firms.
Perfect. And one of the things that we also focus on is sharing information for free. We have a very active blog, a very active YouTube channel, now a podcast. Lawyers aren't known for giving information away for free, of course. I also, you mentioned that you wrote a book, and I suspect that that is aligned with this focus on sharing information, getting good, high quality information out into the public for free. So, how did you decide to take that approach? That this is not going to be a law firm that keeps its expertise close to it and closely guards it, that we are going, if someone wants to learn about an E2 and exactly how to apply, we're gonna make that clear. How did you decide to make that decision?
Yeah, well, I think that it's I think there's an altruistic part of the decision, but then also a good business decision part of it. Now, I think that I can empathize with anyone who is seeking immigration assistance, because I was seeking it myself, and I was also looking for high quality content, such that I could reach out to other people, whether it was to pay, because even when I did the E2 myself, I set up paid consultations with a few lawyers as well, who gave me great advice. So the idea of putting good information out there, I think that whether someone decides to hire us or not, I think that it's useful information that not everyone can afford to hire an immigration lawyer. So I think it's useful information to have out there, so that people can at least get the basics, or at least kind of pull together something on their own. I think it maybe started when I was in one of the last classes that I had at Harvard, where we were required to pull together something kind of to assist on a pro bono basis for people. And what my project was this asylum guide, because what I found in the refugee clinics, I was shocked at the statistics that 85% of or some large number of the applicants actually didn't have counsel. Now, that's obviously because they couldn't afford counsel, right? So providing something that was kind of free and useful to people, I thought that was a good idea, and I think that I think that it's a good idea here too. And then there's obviously the business side as well, because people, I think, they see the high quality information, and then they recognize that you have expertise. When someone joins one of our webinars, they immediately see that the people conducting the webinar actually know what they're talking about, and then sometimes as a result of that, they decide to hire the firm. So I think there are definitely both sides to it, because we're happy to someone sent when we're sending out a newsletter this week or next week, and it has how many guides were downloaded, because we have free guides for every single immigration area that we deal with, and I think it was over 5,000 guides were downloaded.
Wow. And these are
Last
not
year. So
short guides. These
they're
are
not. No, they're
20
very
pages. Yep.
comprehensive. Yeah, they're very, very comprehensive. And we have other immigration lawyers downloading these
Mhm.
guides. We have other immigration lawyers showing up to our webinars. Right. So it's yeah, but
Perfect. And now, Ian, we are coming to the end of our episode. For our listeners, do you have one takeaway that you'd like to leave them with? Whether that's advice, encouragement, any insight, any last thoughts?
yeah, I mean, I think that the one thing that the one thing that I'd leave everyone with, and it's something that I tell my children all the time. I have two 11-year-old girls, and I think that one of the things that I'd always kind of lived by is kind of think about what it is that you want to do, or think about what it is that will make you happy, and then strive for that. The old saying is that find a job that you love, and you'll never have to work another day in your life. And I think that that is very important to do. And it does take perseverance. I didn't take a very traditional route through going to Harvard Law School, and would never have imagined that when I was younger or whatever. I'd never thought about it, would never have imagined it or whatever. But I think that and not everyone has to go to Harvard Law School. But I think that I could be doing what I'm doing today even if I didn't go to Harvard Law School. But but I do think that find what it is that you love doing, and then kind of work towards that, because that ultimately will bring you happiness, and then the financial aspect will, I think, follow after that. So so I think that's the one bit of advice I would leave for people.
Perfect. And if working toward that goal requires a visa and we can be helpful, don't
Exactly.
hesitate to reach out.
Exactly.
Perfect. Well, Ian, thank you so much for taking the time and
Thank
joining
you.
us and sharing your experience, sharing your story with us. To our listeners, thank you all for taking the time. Please do subscribe, leave a review, share this podcast with anyone you think might find it helpful or inspirational, and have a wonderful day. Stay safe, everyone.
Great. Thank you very much, Dustin.